All right, well, let's go ahead and start our Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Let the record show that all the city council members are here. We'd like to excuse Mayor Norm Searle. We also have members of the public as well as members of the city staff. We have asked Council Member Arnold to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now have a moment of silence. As we have this moment of silence, we ask that you would remember those who work in public safety, especially our firefighters, our police. Also, we had Veterans Day this last week. So grateful for the members of the armed services that they help to protect our country. Try to remember them as well. And also, we'd ask you to just kind of keep Mayor Searle in your thoughts, too. He is still recovering, and we hope to have him with us next time. So we'll start our moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to some public comment. This is a time for you to address the City Council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken during this time, but we ask you to try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi. I don't have questions or concerns. I just wanted to take a minute and spoke with Braden earlier. I'm Leanne Pove with the Bonneville Communities That Care Coalition, and we had our 5K half marathon back in August, and we start and end it right across the street here. And just to have a token of our appreciation for you guys for helping us out. Do I give that to you? Who do I hand this to? We appreciated the support of you coming out and helping with that day, and also Rich Taylor, I just want to call him a wrong last name. He's helped quite a bit too. So thank you for that. I'm the only paid staff on the coalition, so we count on volunteers and the support of the cities that we work with and the schools that we work with. And just as FYI, our coalition was nominated and we were chosen as recipient of the Partners in Education Community Agency Award for helping the schools this last year from Weber County. So we're way jazzed about that. I had no clue it was a surprise. So, and just last, so I'm not going over the 3 minutes. I don't know if you guys have been out to your recreation place building, but we have a display out there that we've just started doing. I'll pass these around. It's really cool. It's on track to getting national recognition again. Our last one that we did with the things in the park, the installations in the park, that actually received a advertising award. So it was really kind of cool to have that recognition and be recognized at the actual international level. We presented on that last summer. So, and also, just as FYI, when we started working on the alternatives to opioids back in 2015, there were 7,000 prescriptions written every day in Utah for opioids. And this last year, there was a 30% decrease in the writing of prescriptions, which equals 9.5 million pills fewer that are being done in the last 6 years. We don't claim all of the credit, but we do say that we were part of that, and it's really pretty cool. So we just started another brand new thing that's already people are asking to use this too. So it's learn how to see what's right in front of us, and I'll pass one around for each of you. On the back, there's a QR code. The displays are in your recreation center. They're going to move. I don't know when they're going to move, but we're moving them around the community. They have these little things, but when you use your QR code, then that brings up a different color screen on your phone, and you see different words in each of these. One's on vaping, one's on underage drinking, and one's on opioids. So it's just a catchy way for people to remember, just as they still remember the chandelier that was hung in McCady Hospital that we put up all those years ago. People still talk about that. It gets something in their brain. We'll be doing a press conference in April and inviting all of you to that. Don't have the date yet. They're just planning that out right now. So anyway, want to help you. Thank you for your support these last 10 years. It's starting our 10th year here. And we're just getting the data from the Sharp survey and others, and we will be here in January to give all of you an update on that. We've had some successes, but we all know we call it an asterisk year because COVID. So we don't know how much that really impacted the student scores, but I'll have the update for you in January on that. So thanks, appreciate your help, tons.
Thanks, Leanne. We appreciate all the CTC does, so thanks for coming by.
Great,
I know
thank
you've
you.
got to run on to another meeting,
Yeah,
so
I do. Thank you.
thanks. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to our presentations and reports. We will dispense with the mayor's report and move on to the city administration report. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. I wanted to just look at a couple things in the department reports here. These first couple pages were out of Cody's. And it's not like it's anything new. It's not that you can't see this for yourselves, but it's on page 4, the one that's got these two graphs right there on that same page. You look at that thing, the one on the left, the sales tax overall, and I just naturally look at that and think, well, December is going to be our best month. But if you look at December, that's not true. December is actually low on these charts, and this is year in and year out. The reason being is there's a 2-month lag time there. So it's actually our February report that reflects our Christmas sales. So, but if you look at the sales year to date, we're doing well. The economy, at least in that aspect, is looking good. So if it continues on this rate, we should have a very good Christmas sale. But there again, it comes back to that same point, is we rely so much on that. If anything goes bad, if inflation suddenly hits, or like in 9 years when we lose 0.02%, those numbers are going to drop. And we've got to be able to look at this and say we need some diversification. And I think that's going back to what we talked about earlier. That's part of what we're getting hammered from these other cities and even the state, is that we don't use some of these other options that are available. And so I know we don't want to do it. There's nobody in favor of this, but there just is going to come a point when we're probably going to be forced to. So the sooner we do that, the less impact it would have. If we wait too long, then there are going to be huge hits, and we're going to have to make some huge changes. And so I think that's where we're a little bit nervous about that. But it is interesting. I mean, our sales tax looks good. There's no question about that. But I think for long-range planning, we need to take a look at some options, whether we impose it or not now. At some point in time, somebody's going to have to, whether it's you guys or the next council or even the one after that. So on pages 6 and 7, I just want to bring this to your attention because this is kind of interesting. We talked a little bit about this water, so it fits in well. If you look at those two graphs, one is the residential and the other one's the commercial average users. The dotted line on that was last year's use. And if you look at the solid blue line, beginning in August, which is when we started beating that water usage really hard, it starts to drop, and it drops really, really fast. And so kudos to our residents that they really did listen to us, I think. And the same thing on the residential. If you'll see that, they dropped even faster on their use, and we're quite a bit below last year's usage rates. So we got to keep that in mind going into next summer, especially if we have a light winter. That's going to have to be something we start at the very first this summer and not wait until August to do that. But it is reflective that I think they heard what we were saying and listened to us. So those are all good signs. As far as October anniversaries, Erlene Lee is celebrating 22 years with us. Erlene is actually leaving at the end of the year. We just hired her replacement with a gal named Nikki Green. I think I mentioned that last month. Nikki's been on board, and she's been wonderful. Where we took her from another court, she was very versed in chorus and some of these programs that we use all the time. In fact, just today they were using her upstairs to help them with some stuff on the finances and things like that. So big pickup for us there. We'll miss Erlene. She's been fun. She used to live here. She no longer lives in Riverdale, but she did at one point in time. Her daughter, well, I don't know if she does either anymore, but Erlene's going to be a big loss for us. Joan Daly just passed her 16 years, and Derek Engstrom's next in line at 11. So congratulations to all them. And we hope we get many more out of them. Our staffing authorization, we still, the FTE authorization is 77.25 and our actual is at 74.0. So we're still below that and maintaining those standards. I don't know how long that's going to last. I know you're hearing it from all sides. We're concerned that we can maintain these levels, but so far they're doing really, really well. And a lot of people around here are wearing numerous hats. So again, congratulations to our employees for doing what we've asked them to do, and they do a wonderful job. As far as the community development report, I know, Mike, you had at least one thing we wanted to bring to their attention. You want to cover that with Raising Cane's?
Yeah, I received an email today. They're having some development delays for their site, so their ribbon cutting plan for December has been delayed for a month. So the new date for the ribbon cutting will be January 11th, 2021. I'm still thinking it's at 8:30. She didn't say in the email she sent to me at what time, but assume it's 8:30. I will send you an update email with the specific time for that once I know more information. Just note that.
This was a big sigh of relief this afternoon when we got this. Sean and Chief Brinkman and myself were just going, oh, thank goodness, because we were hoping it would be after Christmas. So Sean was telling me today just to pray for rain to delay this thing, because we're right before Christmas, and that is just going to be a nightmare. We can handle it better in January, and we're meeting with a lot of the parties on Monday and hopefully have that whole thing planned out. But no matter what we do, it's going to be a nightmare. And if you add Christmas rush into that, geez, I hate to even think about that one. So this was. I wouldn't normally say that I was celebrating about a grand opening, but being delayed and pushed back. But this is one of them I'm celebrating on. So we'll be okay on this, I think, now.
So how are they coming on that road?
Road's done. Road's done and open. They were delaying a little bit about that. I put some more heat on him to get those open. It's not finished on the sides, and it's kind of where they were holding off. But my thought was let's get them using that now, so that they're used to using that come grand opening time and not wait until then. And so they got it open within the next day or two. So it is there. And if you decide to go down that way and come back out that way, and you get out the light and you actually get across Riverdale Road, you try those other two exits, it's not going to happen. So. But yeah, it's shaping up. We'll be okay. I don't think it'll look all that pretty, but it'll work. So it's all good. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. We'll move on to item G, action items. Number 1, consideration to approve ordinance 939, making amendments to Title 10 of the Riverdale Municipal Code. This is the landscaping ordinance, and we'll turn some time over to Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. I'll follow some points in your executive summary, just so that the public's aware of what's going on here as well. Earlier this year, we've had drought conditions in the state of Utah, and as a result, Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District has put together programs and initiatives to scale back irrigation usage in the community as much as possible. For that purpose, these programs have led to us participating in audits and looking at ways to potentially address updates in our residential and non-residential landscaping codes as requested of them to Mr. Douglas and our city administrator earlier this year. Throughout the process, we've had multiple discussions internally as well as with John Perry with the Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District, and received feedback of items that the Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District would like to see in a model ordinance or standards that they technically require in order to participate in some of these programs and initiatives like Flip to Strip. As a result, we've put together these updates and initiatives and items. What other item that I did note in the work session, again, just for public knowledge, we did also look at some definitions of parked areas or hard surfaces and how those would be applied to the code, and those have been also updated to be a little more clear, so there's not so much ambiguity going forward as far as administering and enforcing on those standards. That being said, the matter came before the Planning Commission for a first read and setting a public hearing on October 26th. Public hearing was set. We followed all state standards and requirements, advertised accordingly for that public hearing. Thereafter, it was held on November 9th, 2021 before the Planning Commission. No commentary was provided during the public hearing by members of the public. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Planning Commission discussed the items found within the ordinances that you have in your packet, and then they made a motion, or I guess approved a motion to recommend City Council approval of the information that's found in your packet. So the changes are specifically in Title 10, Chapters 14 and 28 for Title 10, Chapter 14, specifically the non-residential landscaping, and then Title 10, Chapter 28 for the residential landscaping. Obviously, for this purposes of this discussion, there's no general plan guidance. And then in your packet, you can see the supporting documentation showing the public hearing, the minutes reflecting the meeting discussion, and the voting thereafter on that, and then obviously the ordinance document supporting it. So with that, I think I would defer if you have any other questions of Mr. Douglas, myself, or Mr. Brooks, who have all reviewed it, and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Mr. Go ahead.
Mike, are they looking at this plan for the other cities too? I know that this Weber Basin is involved with Riverdale, but are they making suggestions to the other cities in Weber County, or is this
I'm going to let Sean answer that.
for us?
So when we have meetings with them, they're asking all of us now as part of our reduction plan. They have to put together a statewide reduction plan, and this is part of their plan, is to reduce landscaping, which conserves water. Their whole goal is there's no more. Right now, there's nowhere to develop other than maybe the Bear River to dam, and there's no plans right now to dam, and so there's really no backup water. And the state's getting pretty heavy-handed with them as far as water reduction, and so this is just one step that way. So I think Layton City's already approved a similar ordinance, and they are asking all of us every time we meet to try and do something this way. And then the other reason, a big reason right now, is we have a lot of residents that want to participate in the conservation programs that they're funding. And without having this, we're not eligible for that money. So that was one of our goals.
Okay.
And we did see a great, I mean, as Steve said, I didn't think at first our residents was going to step up and help us, but our August and September were phenomenal for not being heavy-handed, not going out and really doing enforcement, just doing verbal and asking for help. They really did a great job, and I think they'll continue to. I think there's going to be a change in a mindset. I think people are going to learn that we don't have to be all green, and we can do other things and still look nice. I'm looking to flip my strip at home just because it's hard to keep that water and keep it looking good. I'm going to do something that's easier to take care of and not waste. We were basing figures that's the biggest waste of water in the whole yard is that park strip, so it's just one of the items in there. But yeah, they are asking all the cities they work with to do some kind of implementation.
Councilor Hilton.
Did we amend this according to our discussion earlier? You guys arrived at some different.
So we was just talking about that, and we really agree that there ought to be a trigger for that. We was thinking that we would put in a trigger of 20%.
Okay.
So if you go in and change your landscaping on a residential by 20%, that would trigger it. If you're just doing minor things, no harm, no foul. Do what you want to do in your yard. And honestly, a lot of times we're not going to see what they do in their backyard. I mean, it's pretty tough to know what people are doing until a neighbor calls or whatever. I think 20% is pretty generous because you could do a big portion. I was just putting together percentages on an 8,000 square foot yard, and that'd give you a pretty good percentage of your yard.
We still feel like the Conservancy District will be happy with that.
I don't know. Well, if we pass this tonight and we take it to them, then they'll have to tell us they're not. But so far, I mean, it's just all that's doing is giving us a definition. We have to have a trigger. It's not totally closed because why should a guy that goes out and changes 3 plants, why should he be triggered?
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to put something in there that way. We'll just have to sell it to them.
Okay. And that's per event, 20% per event.
The way that it's worded, and again, this can be massaged because I literally just did it on the fly working with Sean, but right now we have a definition under 10-28-4 that says refurbished, any landscape area on a residential property wherein 20% of the landscaped area is being redesigned and or redeveloped.
Okay.
Anybody else? Councilor Arnold.
One of the things I full support of this. But the one thing that I have a problem with is the 20% that we require for landscaping. Period. If you drive around, I mean, so what we're asking for is like no trees in the park strip. But if you go along Riverdale Road in front of like Applebee's and across the street from there, trees along the whole thing, which wouldn't be allowed, but we're not solving anything. So I hope Weber Basin Water allows businesses to do that as well, to take those out. But the 20%, if you drive around the city and really pay attention, there are some funky grass areas, like the backside of IHOP. You know, you go around corners of buildings and stuff, and just in order to hit 20%, they've put in these weird places for grass that require water, require maintenance, that are just because of our 20%,
Yep.
they're throwing that in there, and I just don't understand that. And that's like the diamonds in Lowe's, and you're right. You know, you go over by Cafe Rio and all the stuff that's going in there. It's like they're doing everything they can to hit that up, and instead of having a tree or some sort of landscaping, it's going to be a stamped concrete. Like if you go in the city center, right in the middle of the parking lot, they have a stamped concrete area that was probably put in to meet that 20%. And as far as, I don't know, traffic wise, if it helps people slow down or something like that, but I can imagine snow removal and things like that is probably a pretty big pain in the butt right there. And I think this 20% of all of this that's coming before us, that 20% is the thing that I have an issue with, because like I said, the old Harley Davidson building that Katrubis's own has this piece of grass behind it. I mean, people don't even know it's there, but they just put it in for the 20% because they have to meet 20%. And I just think when Maverick came, I think with the zero scaping wasn't in there, and we kind of allowed some things to go in there, and they were at 11%. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to say, I mean, I'd rather have a parking lot than a funky parking lot.
Do you want it to be like 15%? Would that be maybe reduce the number?
I don't want to I'd rather have somebody have 10% and maintain it.
We could go as low as 10%. Also, to your diamonds, I had forgot you wanted that. So this is again a last minute thing I wrote in just because I know it's a concern. In Article A under new development 2A, I wrote a statement, and again, this is brand new, so if you don't agree with it, I can strike this, but it says, no small landscaping islands or planters will be allowed in parking areas. Landscape areas should be arranged in massed formats.
Okay.
There you go.
You like that?
Good wording.
That needs to happen.
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, with this, I mean, I would, 10 might be an extreme, but I think we're in extreme circumstances. That as Cheddar, what's
Cheddars.
the Cheddars, as they coming in and they're doing theirs and they're saying, look, we're trying to get people in here. We're talking about raising taxes, but then
Yeah.
I have a resident that I happen to live with that if somebody's not mowing their lawn, watering their lawn or something like that, she's all over it. You know, she's just like, what are we doing? You know? And so I personally would accept this, but I would like to see those percentages of landscape go down.
On business.
Unless you need like snow pile areas.
So one of the things that we are doing with this, and I don't know if you noticed there, we really cut back on the grass on the commercial, and I think that will help take care of some of what you're saying, that we're not just sticking grass everywhere. And we have tried really hard the last 4 or 5 developments to really sit down with them on the landscaping and really work through it and say, hey, we don't have this even in the ordinance here, but here's our concerns. Yeah. We want it to look nice. We don't want to use a ton of water, but we don't like these little teeny areas that make it hard to use a parking lot, that make it this, just to make it a deal. The other thing is, if you don't break it up at all, I think you're going to get really tired of black out there. You know what I mean? Like if we don't have at least enough landscape to break it up, and I don't know if you're willing to try this the way the new ordinances wrote. You know, if we have these changes in there, we're taking away the being able to just put that grass out there. We're going to use more stamped concrete, and we're letting them use stamped concrete and decorative concrete in areas that make sense, and counting it. That's going to cut down on these little areas, and it's going to make it still give it some change. You know, not just a big. Yeah. If we get too shallow, we're going to have these big seas of black asphalt, and it's a give and take, but I think this is a good start. If you want to lower the number, if you want to see how this ordinance works, and then we can come back in 6 months or a year and lower that number if it's still not, if the plans that are coming to you still aren't getting to what you guys want to see. I think this one's going to help, though. I really do. We've been diligent working with them.
Yeah, I just echo what Sean's saying there. One of the things too that we've done just recently, like that Cheddar's thing, when they came into us, we revamped their whole thing for them. What you find is these developers come in, they have their own landscape architects on their staff, so they see this kind of stuff, they just run with it. They put all these cool looking things in there, and we're looking at this going, holy crap. And then this guy came into us complaining about the cost, and you guys make me do this and this and this. So we just sat down and said, take it off the board. This is how we would do it. Sean and Mike adding their 2 cents worth. This whole plan's going to come in completely different. So we've started to take this more proactive approach from our side, because it's not really our job to design it for them, but we're seeing them come in consistently like that. So we're just taking a little more proactive stance, saying, look, you don't have to do it that way. You can save money, you can save water, and da-da-da-da-da. And they're lighting up because it's working well for them. It's a lot cheaper, too, to be honest with you. You don't have to dig all these trenches and put these islands and trees and stuff in, but it still looks good. And so that one was a big deal, and I think they were really happy with what we ended up with at the end. We haven't seen the final thing, but we know it's going to be completely different. So.
Yeah, I just got to add to that. I actually talked to one of the development partners after we had our meeting, and he still was stumbling on what that term landscaping means, because all the other cities they work in, I guess in the other cities they just think it means green space. Our code is real lenient. It talks about rock and decorative features and planter boxes and benches, and he was like, I can do all that, and you guys call that landscaping? We were, yes, we're trying to create a nice feature that's not all plants. That's the goal of Riverdale. It always has been. So what I realized when I talk to developers is I have to help them reimagine the site, so they realize it's not just, hey, go and do your traditional landscaping like you've done in other cities. We're flexible. We're trying to give you this opportunity to make a cool, unique location that has nice features that is more indicative of a Riverdale site, and not just some random throw a bunch of trees and grass in and walk away. So that is something we are proactively doing as staff.
I think one other thing too that you'll notice is now that we're getting some that look like that, we can point to them and say, hey, look what these guys did. They made the landscape ordinance, and they're not all just a big chunk of little tree here and a little tree there. You do this kind of stuff. It's easier the more we get on board to be able to point it out to them and say, you could do this. Look at what these guys did. These guys did this. And I really think some of them really look nice. I think we don't have to have all grass to look nice out there. I think some of the businesses look really nice now, and it seems like it's easier for them to maintain. One of the gripes I know from the lady you live with is when we have all these big brown spots in green grass. It looks terrible, right?
Yeah, she talks to you almost. She talks to me. She's like, I got to email Sean, but I'm afraid he'll.
No, so it's all good. I think we're being proactive, and I think we're starting to get developers to come in and work with us and do it together. I don't want to go plow a parking lot. Like I don't know if you remember, but we put in all them islands at the senior center. After we plowed that for one winter, we're like, oh no. We took islands back out because we couldn't do snow removal. So when we sit down with these guys, I'm like, are you guys even thinking about this? Can you drive through it? Can you plow it? But we do need landscape areas to stack snow as well. We need somewhere to put it, and that's the other thing, the landscape areas, even if they're rock or decorative concrete, they give us somewhere for the guys that are plowing that to actually put the snow, and hopefully we get a bunch of it this year and it's stacked high, but I don't know.
So what's your thoughts with the 20%? Because if we had the 20%, and with the clause that you put in there that it's not these little whatevers to put in there, you take those out, that means you push the 20% out to these other areas. I mean, would you guys be in favor to lowering it to like 15%, but it's pushed out, or are you good with the 20? What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I think it's what you want it to look like out there. I mean, how much differentiation do you want from just blacktop? Because if you give them a wide open slate, it'll go blacktop because that's quick, fast, easy, and it's the cheapest thing they can do. But how much blacktop can you stomach as a city? You know what I mean? When I drive in some of the cities that it's a row of blacktop and it never breaks up, I'm thinking, man, they could have did something to break it up a little bit. So I think it's up to you guys. What do you want it to look like out there? We can make it work either way for us. I mean, I think they can find places to stack snow at 15%. I think we can make all of that work. It'll be less watering. But how do you want it to look, I guess, is the question.
Well, it's just like, so there's two areas that I watch all the time that are residential, and one's on the back side of River Glen as you go along Freeway Park Drive. the residents don't think that because it's on the other side of their fence along that side, and it looks terrible. And Ritter Drive's the same way now because they got the stamped concrete that goes along the park strip all along Ritter Drive. And some wonderful person has been weed eating and all that this summer to make it look good. But I'm tired, because I weed eat it. And it's like, I've had people stop and go, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. And I'm like, well, my wife can't stand it, and I can't stand it. She's like, look at that. I'm like, I'll just walk out.
If you're practiced up on that, give us a call next summer. We're looking
Give
for.
me a list of what you need.
Yeah, we're
I need
looking
an
for weed
industrial
eaters for
eater, man.
sure.
Volunteer right here,
But it's like that stuff cuts down on some things, but also it increases other issues.
So that's, we did the stamped concrete up there on Ritter because we knew they wouldn't take care of a park strip.
Absolutely, for sure.
And so it's like we keep trying to get there.
Yeah.
We just haven't. We're not perfect yet. You know what I mean? But like if we would have done them do landscape park strip up there, you know what that would have looked like by now.
Well, yeah.
So we have changed things, and I think we're making progress. I just don't know if we're perfect yet, and we're gonna have to tweak these. I mean, honestly, they can't sit for 10 years without you guys revisiting them. When we have stuff come up, we're just gonna have to tweak it and get there. I don't know how else to put it, but I think this is a huge change. If you want to lower the numbers, it doesn't bother me a bit.
Well, I think so. So, Mike, you were heavily involved in the Maverick
Yeah.
there, in the city center, and so they got down. I think 11 sticks in my mind.
I think it came in a little higher than that, but not too much higher. And then they tweaked it to 18. And I remember telling them, you got to go the extra mile and hit 20. You can hit the stamped concrete. And when they came to the conclusion they could put stamped concrete around the building and around the aprons of their gas.
So I think that when they first came in, it was 11%.
Yeah, it
We were
might have
like,
been
"Whoa."
that low. And then they were trying to do development in lieu elsewhere off their site. And the code lets us do that at your discretion. But you're saying as council, you weren't really in favor of that.
Well, and it's just like what's the pyrocanthum? Is that how you pronounce that?
Which one?
Pyrocanthum.
Pyrocantha, the thorny one
Yeah.
with the orange.
Oh, the
berries.
plant.
Yeah, so you go right behind Sam's Club, by Katrubis's building right there, and it's this forest of unkempt stuff, but it meets the.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're not taking care of it. It's just this huge growth of stuff, and I just think somehow it's got to come together enough. We want it to look good, but does that look good when it's got these big forested thorns with Walmart signs?
Well, and I may be,
flying in the wind,
and to that, Alan, I may be shining a light on my department technically, because under C, general maintenance, we have code in there that we could enforce upon. So if you see things like that and we need to enforce and regulate on these businesses, may that just shoot it, I guess, Steve's way and have him send it to me, and we'll send him an Instagram to maintain their landscape a little bit better. If there are things that bother you or residents complain to you, let us know. And
Resident.
Or take your weed eater over there and just do it.
Yeah, I'll just take my cutters over there and start.
You're gonna be busy next year.
I mean, in those cases, at that point, the landscaping was fine. It's that the businesses are not maintaining, or their agreements with their landscapers aren't doing a good job. So if we send them an Instagram that, hey, this may end up in court if you don't take care of it, maybe we get a different response and they get better groomed as well. So that's not necessarily the landscape plan's fault. That's the maintainer's fault.
Yeah. Okay.
Counselor Stevens.
Yeah, I think so, because I don't know if it went anywhere.
Okay, I've read this. I went to the planning commission. I feel in concept I agree. There's some things that bother me about this. So whether it's just me, whether it can be addressed, I don't know. Part of it was addressed in the last conversation. By the way, just as a question, why are trees such a bad in the parking? I mean, they're supposed to save the planet. So why are we anti-tree?
They don't fit the space, is technically what it comes down to. They don't like. So if you look at what we have, we pretty much by ordinance we have a 4.5 foot park strip, right? So we already regulate the tree that fits in there. And so, and then if you look at all the damage they do, I mean, we're spending 20 something $1,000 a year grinding, and I would say most of that's going towards ones that have been caused by a tree because so what happens, they plant a tree out there, even if it's on the list, but they have it in grass, right? Well, that area, as we've just talked about, it's the worst place you can have grass because you have to overwater it to keep it alive because of the heat, the salt, all the stuff on the road. So they overwater that park strip, use all this water on the park strip. Well, the trees never grow deep roots out there because all the water's on the surface. Well, if your tree roots are on the surface and it starts to grow out, what happens? It lifts the sidewalk, it lifts the curb and gutter and breaks it. The other thing that happens is it's great when they first put it in, but then they don't want to maintain it, right? So we go out as a city. So we started last week. We started hounding out all these letters. We're going to be coming by. We're going to be cutting your trees because we got to have 14 foot of clearance from the back of the curb up. So the next thing that happens, here we go down and we have this nice tree right here that looked pretty good until it started to mature. And now on the curbside, we're cut up 14 feet. It looks like this and like this. And then if they've done their side over the sidewalk, you have the same edge on the sidewalk. And the other thing you'll notice, as we've talked with the landscapers and a lot with Weber Basin, is the salts in that tend to kill them trees and make it really hard. You go look around and look at how many trees in the park strip are diseased. And it's a huge number of them that don't look good or are diseased. So why do we keep putting the problem out there? They have a whole front yard that they own. They can put trees in. They fit. They have room for the roots to grow and all of that stuff. If it's in the park strip, the roots don't fit. We go in there to do utility work. We can't get to a meter box because the tree roots have grown over the top of it. We go in there and have to cut the tree roots out to do sidewalk or anything. We end up usually killing the tree, and then they're mad at us because they don't want the tree when they have to trim it. But when somebody else hurts it or does something to it that has to be done because it's in a utility right away, then they're concerned about it. They just really don't fit well out there.
All right, thank you.
That's
You seem to
the best
have,
I can do.
have a working knowledge of this. All right, that was for my benefit. Thank you. All right, couple other things. I have a series of questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
In the discussion, we're kind of bouncing between residential and commercial, and I see some of this, and I don't know. It's just because it wasn't that long ago, but I didn't see it in this iteration of it. There was no fruit trees in the front yard. Now I've seen fruit trees in people's yard, like a peach tree or cherry tree or whatever, but that was, I think, a long time ago. It was there. It is not now. I didn't see it. Okay, so that doesn't sound right. Okay, thank you, because that now. As I'm approaching retirement, and I decided where to occupy my time, and decided to get involved with a master gardening program, and the grow boxes and the different things that people are doing, and the grow boxes, and I've seen some in Riverdale because they can be added and subtracted. Is that going to now front yard? Now backyard is one thing, but front yard, how does that? And usually these are, some might have flowers, some might have green vegetables, some might have vegetables like tomatoes or whatever. Okay, so, and again, this is a scenario, and I tried to find it. How does that?
It would be considered part of your landscaping as far as percentage wise.
Okay, it does. Okay. And in the back, you can, I saw one yard, it's not in the city. He's got the whole front yard. It's kind of got a fence around it. It looks very attractive, but it's a whole garden. That's a small lot too, but it's this whole garden in the front yard and in the back.
You have one in Riverdale?
I think I'm aware
Over
of it.
by Amber Herrick.
I'm just saying there's one in Riverdale.
There's one over there that's got watermelons or something. It's
Yeah.
At least one that I'm aware of. That's a front yard.
In
That's
some
a garden.
places it looks pretty. It looks interesting. Let me leave it that way. Okay. All right. So that's acceptable then. Okay. Which brings me to the other part, and that is you're being very definitive on like 3 inches of mulch and so on. And some of these terms, who is policing this? I mean, do you have to have somebody's come out and sign off on it?
Oh, what we're doing there is, so what
Or
happens
is
is
it reactionary?
if somebody comes in, we're trying to catch people when they're coming in. We want to just give them good information. If you come in and put 3/4 of an inch of mulch down, guess what? The weeds are going to be there automatically right then. If you come in and put a barrier down and put 3 inches in, they're going to come eventually, but it buys you some time and it also makes them easier to pull. So it's just more or less good landscaping techniques. Now, are we going to go measure everybody's yard and say, you got 3 inches, you only got 2 3/4? No. We're trying to give them a good education, a good standard to follow and try and meet. We're not looking to penalize somebody for being 2 3/4 inches deep.
The way this is written, it sounds so definitive, and it's just like, what are we creating here? It's kind of a bureaucracy to go out and evaluate and
No, there's no desire
because
to
a
do
lot of
that.
times these are used in these types of criteria are used as after the fact, meaning somebody makes a complaint or whatever, and then you start looking at it. Well, how does it meet our ordinance or whatever? And that's the kind of thing that kind of bothers me a lot, is when we put such definitive numbers on there that it anyway makes me nervous. Okay, all right, I'll just leave it at that. Next one, I think I know what you're talking about with the blacktop on commercial, because it was I think the Shopco parking lot all the way over to what used to be Toys R Us. I think was the poster child for what we didn't want, and I get it, and so but having that higher number is, I mean, we need to show some flexibility, because it's about curb appeal and not a number. And so it's, the letter of the law, the spirit of the law type thing of what's our objective here? Well, we're trying to have a attractive city from the roadway. And so, but we got caught up in these numbers. Oh, you have to have it. And that's why you had this crazy, stupid places where they were put in landscape to meet the ordinance. And it was just, it was so rigid that it became impractical. And having some latitudes, and I don't know how to write that in there, and I don't know how to enforce it, but having latitudes so that it becomes more practical and still meets the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish is the direction I'd like to see this to go.
So I will say this: put the number in there at whatever you want it at, because that is it. The very most they're going to put in is the lowest number you allow them to.
They push the
They're going to push that to the very 10th of a foot. So if you are comfortable with 15%, put 15%, because don't think you're going to get 20% out of them if you put 15. It's just not going to happen unless for some reason the design of that property, they need to do something else. They can't put a building on it. They need to do something different. Other than that, you're going to get the exact number that you have in there. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, and in there, if you look at 2, it says landscape features not limited to water features, benches, planters, decorative walls, decorative ornaments, stamped concrete, small decorative rocks, boulders, mulch, decorative curbing. They have a lot of options. They just don't know how to exercise those options because they get so myopic with their planting concepts in other cities of what they expect landscaping to be, that they can't branch out and see that we're letting them have other decorative features to make it a placemaking experience.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to have those hard conversations. Again, we literally had that conversation with these developers, and they're like, we can't do it. It's like, you have a lot of options. How can you not do it? Well, we can do all this stuff. Yes. Oh, that solves our problem and brings our cost down. Their mindset gets so caught up in what other cities require. So we have to constantly have that discussion.
All right, and when we, I don't know, this is kind of a one size fits all. I mean, it's an up or down for both the residential and non-residential. maybe in the future break it out a little bit so there's 2 votes. But anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Counselor Arnold, I had a question. Are you getting ready to make a
go ahead.
motion?
Yeah.
What's a decorative ornament?
Have you seen those people that sell like the statues of aliens and stuff?
Okay, is that what that is?
Buffaloes.
Okay, that was an honest question. I mean, I read this thing pretty close, and I understand what most of them are, but I wasn't sure what a decorative ornament
Well,
was.
like a statue, like
Okay.
some kind
Oh,
of
okay.
decorative feature
Like a horse
that
statue.
creates a uniqueness for a center.
Okay.
Some kind of sculpture, something that's unique that would count, that makes you want to go there to maybe
Okay.
shop or be there.
Dinosaur, Sinclair.
Oh, the
I was
Sinclair dinosaur.
recently
I got you.
at the Ellis property, Ellis Farms, and out there on the back 40 are a lot of really antique tractor that would make great ornaments and whatnot.
Oh, here we go. All right, come get them, huh? So, my take on it is it feels a little heavy-handed to me. The 65%. I mean, I look at my yard. I don't think it would fit. I don't think it would pass. I don't feel like I have a lot of grass, but I don't know. I mean, I have areas where I have a garden. That's not going to fit the xeriscape. That would take
Don't
away.
upgrade.
Yeah. My raspberries, my raspberry patch.
And make the garden, if it's not blanket watered, you could probably use that on the xeriscape type, depending how you're watering.
Watering comes down to watering.
That's the whole thing on the garden. If you're,
Yeah.
it's
You drip it, you're good.
drip line.
Okay. And I agree with that. I think that's awesome. I mean, I've used drip lines. I used a lot of drip lines this year. I switched a ton of my stuff to that. I really like
It
it.
really helps with the weeds as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Oh,
you
it's
noticed
great. I
that,
put down
but
plastic. I've got drip lines. I mean, but I just don't think it fits. It's not drought tolerant. You know what I mean? I don't know if it fits in there the way it's defined right now.
Just a question along those lines. How come you can't have drip lines and like a spray on the same valve?
because of the water pressure. So when you run a drip line, you put a pressure reducer on it. And so you reduce the pressure down so that them lines don't blow all over and the water just trickles out slowly. And on a spray head, you actually need the pressure to raise the head up, override the spring, and bring the head up out of the ground and put the water out.
Okay.
So you typically would not want to run them on the same zones. It's not that I've never seen it done. It just doesn't work well on the drip side. And most of them fittings are a push-in fitting. There's nothing that locks them in place. So when you get a lot of pressure on them, after a few years, the pipe gets a little more brittle. They'll start blowing apart on you.
Oh, okay.
So you usually run a drip at like in the 30 to 40 PSI range, and your heads would run a lot better to 60, 75 or higher pressure.
There is maybe a way to do this, Councilmember Mitchell. I'm just thinking, this is completely just an idea I had, but there might be a way to say non-turf living landscape where it has that list in the 65%.
Yeah.
Hard surface, hardscape space, non-turf living landscape, non-living landscape, xeriscape, and other drought-tolerant landscape features. Because really the issue isn't the landscape, it's the turf, grass
and
landscape.
I agree.
So if I
agree.
say non-grass, non-turf landscape, and if Sean were comfortable with that, I could easily add that
Yeah.
to that 65 percentile, and that might address your issue.
That would address it very well. I just feel like I can either have basically xeriscape and benches and ornaments, and then I can have turf and garden. I have the two sides, and my garden's going to take out of my turf. It's taken because it just doesn't fit in that 65%, and it just felt a little bit heavy on that side. But yeah, if you can adjust that a little bit. I appreciate the part where you maxed it at, let's see, hard surfaces not exceeding the 50%, because we had on 700 two people just rocked their entire yards, and it was like, oh wow, like this is going.
We're
you
not
know,
letting that happen. That's
we're
what
xeriscaping now, and it's just rock, gravel. Anyway, okay, well, I feel better about that. That was kind of my biggest thing. So are we going to leave it at 20%, Councilor Arnold? Is that what you?
I think, like you said, I think we ought to revisit it. I don't know
see how it
about
works.
annually, but if we revisit it,
Yeah. Let's try it, see how it works.
We're goals.
You want to go 15?
Yeah.
Councilor Arnold, Councilor Stevens?
Because the thing is, when Maverick came in, I remember the 11, when it came through, when they first came through, they had 11%. And I remember the tug of war that we had to get them up to 20, but that's when they added the stamped concrete and stuff like that. So when we're talking about the 20% and you're talking about the stamped concrete and the way that's added in there and the towns or city center, town center,
Yeah.
whatever they're calling that.
Town square.
And if you go right in the middle, there's a big chunk of stamped concrete.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're driving and all of a sudden, you know.
Well, he had plans to do something more there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like a gathering venue.
That was not gonna, you know what I mean? He probably used that to meet some of the landscaping, but from my recollection of discussions, that was not just going to be a blanket piece of concrete. He had
Christmas tree would go there.
he was going to
Christmas.
have like stuff that was going to fill
Clock
that up.
tower.
Not,
Seasonally rotate. That was his plan for that center area.
we haven't
originally.
seen that happen.
They've never done it.
But it wasn't just when we was looking at it and discussing it with him. My recollection was
It
that
is.
wasn't just a big
You're right.
blanket piece of concrete.
You're
There was
right.
going to be some stuff that was like
Back to enforcement.
happening.
So I mean, the thing, like 20% worked for Maverick, but they had to get creative, and like you're saying,
Exactly.
working with you guys to say, don't put the diamonds in there, do something else, and they're like, oh, we can do that, and
But I think
that's
a
why
success story. Sorry to interrupt you, but isn't that Maverick therefore a success story of how to make 20% look nice?
yeah.
So to me, 20% is a good number, but let's be flexible in how we get them to
'Cause
implement.
I honestly think they are. I mean, if you went by non-stamped concrete and all that kind of stuff, they are at 11.
It might
They
be.
probably are. You know,
So-
But
we
the
know
other
people
stuff
are
makes it look
using.
good.
Yeah.
Especially with guidance now and us trying to cut back on water using, we know they're using more of them optional features than they ever had because before, what's the quickest thing for them to do if they have the space? Throw in green grass and be gone, right?
Yeah, because that's the developer,
Yeah,
and then whoever's maintaining it either does
he's
or
stuck
doesn't.
with it, right? So we can cut it if you want to stay at 20 and give us 6 months. See what the new plans are coming in. See what they look like when they're there. What's happening with them? If you don't like it, it's not set in stone.
And I think going to the 85% of the 20, I mean, they're going to have to get aggressive. And so that's why I would think that the 20 be okay. Because you're just saying 5% of the whole thing is going to go to asphalt.
That's how I feel.
Counselor Stevens?
Is there a mechanism we can put in where, say it's 20%, but you can, like with a building, you can ask for a variance. Put in a mechanism where you can allow some sort of variances as per some sort of an authority, like the Mrs. Arnold Beautification Committee. I don't know.
I don't
You know,
like that.
However you want
I
to
don't
call
know if we
that.
want to go that.
It would start to create arbitrary.
Yeah, I don't like.
Go ahead.
Okay, but can there be, basically what I'm looking for is do we have latitudes that are, because, anyway, I
think the answer is yes, in that they would work with, just like again this experience we had. They work with staff, they talk to us, they work through it. Which I have we have pre-application review meetings even with staff, and there's plenty of reviews throughout the process. They go to Planning Commission twice. Planning Commission's gonna look at that and review that and comment on it. And they come back to staff each time they go to Planning Commission. Either Sean or myself or both of us trying to work through their issues before they resubmit. Usually, that's kind of what you don't see going on behind the scenes. These discussions. And obviously, even at council, if at council you're reviewing plans and you see something, you're like, this is dumb, or I can't make sense of that. You have all these options. Why are you doing that? That's on the table. That's fair discussion, even at a council meeting.
And I think one thing that you guys don't see that we've been aggressive with lately is if they're bringing, like we had somebody propose something like the diamonds again, and I'm just like, no, don't even give us that. We know our council does not like that. Find a different option. And sometimes that's a hard thing to say to them right up front, but we're very upfront with them now. We try and commit to what you guys are, these meetings, what you're telling us, we try and take it back and give it to them to work with. Now, we can't always get them to sway away from it, but we try and persuade them to do what you guys are asking tonight. What we're hearing for feedback, when they come in, we're trying to steer them in directions that gets what you guys are asking of us. And it's a hard fight sometimes, but I do think it's really hard on staff if you make it arbitrary and you let one guy deviate from the others, and it makes it really tough on staff to have
You'd
to.
almost be open for a lawsuit too, wouldn't you? If
It's just tough. I mean,
somebody said, well, you let so-and-so get away with this and
we're doing the same thing or close to the same thing. But they're going to meet most of them's going to push for exactly whatever your minimum number is. You guys decide. So whatever you're happy with, run with it.
Counselor Hill.
I just want to, before we take a vote on this, thank the three of you, Mike, Steve, and Sean, for the hard work you guys are doing. You think about the underlying discussions, meetings, thought process you guys have had to arrive at this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Counselor Arnold.
So I'm confused about one point, so I'm going to do it in the motion that's all right. I'd move to approve ordinance 939 as stated within the packet, other than, Mr. Eggett, you had
He has
a
several
suggestion with something that I have no idea right now.
amendments. We just have
We
a
had- we
motion
had to
be
re-
as amended in the this
Did you
Refurbished.
take notes?
Yeah, I have them all in here. Refurbished definition.
Yeah.
I had the note about the parking diamonds and creating masses of areas.
Okay.
And then I added comments on the 65 percentile of adding the hard surfaces and the
That's the one I was-
non-grass, non-turf living landscape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one I was
so
like
it's-
blown away or out of my mind. So
That was all of them.
That's all.
Okay.
okay,
We just need to make sure that's included in that motion.
so move to approve ordinance 939 as stated within the packet with the amendments that Mr. Eggett has just mentioned on the record.
Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Can we put a trigger in there to revisit this or have not necessarily revisit it, but have a presentation by staff, 6 months, a year, I don't care, to evaluate how this new ordinance and your recommendations and our recommendations of what we'd like to see. I don't know, however you want to
I
work
think
that.
what I'd do on that, Bart, is we'll put that on the recorder's list of agenda items or something. We can set it for a time certain. I don't think I'd put it in the ordinance. And we can do it
for
this way
strategic
informally.
planning.
I'm sorry?
Do it for the joint strategic planning when you have the planning
In
commission
July?
there, because then it's,
A report. in
because they
July.
review them first too.
That would be
That would
perfect.
be a really good time to report on it, because then we could
Yeah.
rediscuss landscaping with the planning commission.
Because this needs to be tweaked at least annually, or at least reviewed, having a healthy discussion
Yeah.
like this annually.
We'll make note of that.
Okay.
Michelle,
So we
put
will
that on your
revisit that.
list of
Sure,
things
has
to
be
do.
Part of the motion. but
Nope.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it part of the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. We would like to revisit that. Please make some notes let's look at that in July or so, 6 months, 7 months, whatever.
I would just like to say thank you. This is big for us. I think for the residents, in some ways it's maybe a little bit restrictive. In some ways it's going to offer them opportunities. And just the general discussion now when we're meeting with developers, this gives us a good feel of what to recommend and which ways to head them for where our city council wants us to be. And I think that's key in a lot of them discussions. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, consideration of resolution 2021-26 to accept and approve the canvass results for the 2021 municipal election. Ms. Maragoni.
Okay, so what I have here is the official results for the election with all of the official numbers. And I'll just read those to you with a couple of other stats. And then what we need to do is just certify that, certify the results, I guess. So we had a total of 4,181 ballots mailed out. 1,566 came back, so we were looking about 37.5% people who actually voted. 6 people still voted in person, which I thought was interesting. 17 of the ballots were not counted. Reasons were 8 of them were past the deadline, 3 were unsigned, 5 of them the signatures didn't match the voter record. As far as results for each candidate, we have Ann Hansen with the most votes at 956, which was 33.89% of the votes. Bart Stevens at 927, which is 32.86%. Karina Merrill, 770 votes for a total of 27.3%, and Jeffrey Savage at 168, for a total of 5.96. Total votes cast for those positions is 2,821. And then we had 1,362 votes for our only mayor candidate. So Brady Mitchell got that one with 100% of the votes. With that, where city council candidates Ann K. Hansen and Bart Stevens received the highest number of votes in the general election and are hereby certified as the winning candidates in the general election for the office of city council. City Mayor Braden Mitchell received the highest number of votes in this general election and is hereby certified as the winning candidate in the general election for the office of city mayor. That's what we're signing. Do you have any questions about it?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, this is a resolution, so we need a roll call vote.
Multiple hats tonight.
Councilmember Arnold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hudson,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember Ellis,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye. Looks like it passes unanimously. Thanks, Ms. Maragoni. All right. Action item number 3, consideration to set a public hearing for a proposed franchise tax. Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to beat this to death. We did discuss this back in strategic planning in the summer, and at that point you indicated you wanted us to keep pushing forward, and that's what we're doing. So we're here to at least on that, we felt that the franchise tax was the least impactful option we had available to us now, and we just want to get your direction and preferably set it for a hearing, I think, at this point, to discuss it further and see if that's the route we're going to take.
Get a consensus.
Would this just be a consensus that we're looking for, or?
Yeah, because we're just setting it on an agenda. We're not going to discuss it as is tonight. We're just going to set it on an agenda. So
And would that be the next agenda we're looking
that was our
at, or-
plan, was put it on the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Councilor Stevens.
If we have 2 council members present, can we put the, for the property tax also?
According to our rules, under the council rules, that's what it takes. If you got 2 people, you could add that into it as well.
That would be a public hearing or discussion? A discussion.
Again, it would be, we're setting that one for public hearing. We could do it however you want to do it. As I mentioned earlier, generally on property tax, that's going to take a little bit more time, so we may want to split those up. You could run them at the same time, but that one's going to be a little bit more delayed than probably the franchise tax would be by the time we took to the public and stuff.
Wouldn't it be just on the agenda to consider a public hearing?
Right.
So, I mean,
That's all we're doing tonight.
is
Yeah.
it-
Are
no,
we
I
sorry,
mean,
are we
for
setting the public
property,
hearing?
property tax would be on the agenda to, so
To
it's,
set a public hearing.
Right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is it on tonight's agenda to set the hearing?
That is not, and then we wouldn't have to do it. This is just a courtesy thing we're doing for you guys. You'd ask us to do this before, but under your rules, we can do that outside of that. If 2 of you agree to it, we can set it on an agenda, at least for that purpose.
We can set.
We could
I'm so confused.
property tax discussion if that's what you want to do it as. Like I said, that's probably, we're going to have to do a couple other things with the property tax, so that one's going to be a little bit more delayed. But if you want to run them both together, it's going to slow the property or the franchise tax one down a little bit. That one we can move forward on.
Okay, Councilor Arnold.
I don't want to do them together because major heat on both of them. And I personally don't understand the franchise tax enough. I would like to understand it more before a public hearing where somebody's coming in and talking to us about it when I truly don't understand it myself. I know Cody gave us kind of a brief overview of what it was going to be, and I would like to understand it more before the public's asking me about it, because you know, if we get it outside of a meeting, public hearing, we're just like, okay, we're talking to you, and typically we have a public hearing and then an action item behind it, right?
We can set it as a discussion item without anything further if you're just seeking more information on it. I think the point is we just keep this moving, whatever we do.
If we could, I mean, I would propose that we set it as a discussion item and not a public hearing yet.
That's fine.
Maybe we could put discussion item and set a public hearing together, like one behind each other.
Is it two separate items?
Yeah,
We could do that.
I'd
Or just
I'd feel more
franchise,
comfortable
right?
with it.
For just franchise at this point.
Yeah, right. And then,
Probably a good idea.
and then maybe
with that.
make a note for the property tax to be talked about in strategic planning. That'd give you 3 months.
At our future, those two items on the future
Yeah,
agenda, right?
and then we're rocking, like you're saying, keeping it moving.
So what we would do here is we would take a consensus to set a public hearing for this, but we would also need two council members to put a discussion about franchise tax on the next agenda.
Right.
And then we just run those one after another. Is that
Cool.
okay? So for right now, our agenda item is to consider to set a public hearing. Do we have a consensus for that?
No,
And a discussion, right?
Well,
One following the other.
Well,
I mean, I guess we
we'll
can.
add it, yeah. If we have two.
Yeah, we have to, me and you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the consensus, Councilor Stevens is a no. Everybody else is a yes. Okay. So that is a majority. So that public hearing can be put on the next agenda, and then it sounds like these two would like to also have a discussion.
I think we ought to know what exact franchise tax you're proposing so that we can have a.
And
hearing
the
on
benefits
that.
and what it's going to
We'll
bring.
bring
So,
we'll bring all that in.
yeah. Just
So the discussion just prior to. the-
prior to it. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I think that's a good. Okay. Moving on, we have comments. Is there any comments from the city council?
So, I don't know, many of you know.
You guys are so
but
polite. I apprate it. Like,
I'm trying. You gave me that dad.
well, I did
the
give
other
you that,
night.
and I appreciate it. Everybody's been very well behaved, and
I
I
saw it.
appreciate I appreciate the way everybody's gotten along and the civility that's been demonstrated tonight. So thank you, Councilor Arnold.
Wait till I bring this up.
Oh, geez.
I was supposed to say.
No, so I asked Steve for some information. I had some people, those of you that know Ryan Jones
Oh, yeah.
passed away, and I had some people come to me and ask if we could possibly look at renaming Golden Spike Park after him. And I thought that might be a little big because like he's probably been there every day for the last 25 years, you know, really involved in Riverdale sports and all that kind of stuff. So I would like to propose to look at maybe naming a field or the diamond, like the main diamond. Sean, I don't know if that causes you any grief, but to keep the park, Golden Spike Park, but the diamond right there by the restrooms, maybe a memorial type diamond.
Talk about what we was talking about earlier.
Yeah. I guess where it's not really where it's not an agenda item, we have been working on it. Sean and I met today and discussed some of these things. Sean came up with some good ideas that I hadn't really even thought about. Of other additional options that we could look, but I'm also still gathering the history. I just got going on it yesterday. We've gone through all of our records here today, and we can't find a lot of history to tell us why it's even named that or when it was. We about narrowed the date down, but if you could buy me a little bit more time, I guess is what I'm asking for.
I was just bringing it up.
Right, and then I'll update you on what our discussions were, because I think some of these things that Sean had might give you some light too on the whole thing that are nice and touching, but an overall name of a park would be something that's a little bit more complicated. So if you could just buy me some more time, I'll bring some more information in the next meeting if that's okay.
Councilor Stevens?
well, not to be a Debbie Downer here, but, you know, you're talking about somebody's legacy, and when I was first approached on it, it was like the funeral hasn't even happened yet.
Right.
And it was just like, I don't know, how quickly do we do something to memorialize somebody, and why do we memorialize somebody? And so,
Right.
And I hate to compare, but you know, I use the walk, the river walk, and there's a memorial to Nancy Bruff, and you know, it's nice, but it's really for the family.
Right.
And so should there be a 1-year moratorium? These are
Well,
just,
and those are some of the things we've been talking about, Bart, because we don't have a set of criteria that we look at to decide when and how and who we're going to do this for, and so it's a little bit complicated. But if we can just have it, we'll bring it up as a discussion item next time, kind of fill you in on where we're at. I think we can get somewhere. I mean, I think we can make everybody happy with it, with what we're talking about. So just buy me a little bit more time. That's not too impacting, but still pays tribute in that sense.
So this is actually one of the things I was going to try and do as mayor, but I'll kind of bring it up now, I guess. But Roy has a program where you can, and Sean, I'll pretend like you're not here, but they have a program where you can actually have something installed, like a bench. You raise the money and install it.
That's one of the things we
Or
talked about
a tree,
that we like.
you know, and then you get a little plaque at the bottom of the
right.
tree, and they plant
there's
a tree
pros and
for
cons.
you.
The thing with the trees is you put a marker on there. Now that's in Sean's way, and so that's a
Right.
little bit more concerning.
Right.
Plus
We
the
need
type
someone
of
that
trees.
can weed eat. We got to weed
Right,
eat around.
but we'll
that
bring
place.
some of this stuff in because this was exactly our discussion that
Yeah.
Sean had today. So
Deal that's one of the things I suggested, Steve, is looking at a bench. The other thing that does is the family has a little bit of buy-in on it because there's a cost associated with that.
Yeah.
Which, not trying to limit people, but we can't condone every single person, I guess
Right.
is what I'm saying. So if they have a little bit of buy-in on it, there's things that we can do. We have a really nice river trail. We have a lot of space in Riverdale, and it could be something that, say, a bench. It's very beneficial to like the old people.
Yeah.
So like at Golden Spike Park right now, we don't really have a whole lot of benches. And a lot of the old people, when we've talked to them in the past, some of them even on doctor's orders, they need a rest every half a mile or a quarter of a mile. So it's maybe a win-win. We get a
Yeah.
free bench. We have to maintain it still, but they get their loved one's name on the placard on the bench. And the living things are just way harder because then what do you do when a windstorm comes in and breaks half the tree down? They don't want you to cut the tree down, but the tree's dying. I mean, where a bench, it serves until it's no longer useful, and then it's taken out, and somebody else could have the spot. But just thoughts.
Yeah.
The Lions Club has a couple of benches they're looking to place, and maybe we could use those benches as a
So
memorial
we've
to
ins-
Ryan. You know,
We installed the one. I think she has one more. Them ones, they're not as heavy duty as the normal benches
Right,
we
they're
use
plastic.
in a normal play area or a heavy use area. So we kind of have to be careful where we put them.
Right.
And to keep both the bench safe and the people using them. But there's options out there. I think we can come up with something you guys will at least.
I think it'd be great if you did the trail, you know, that's already going around the park. If you do it so it's just rounds out a little bit, so the mowers don't even slow down. I mean, they're just go out around it, put it right. I think a bench is a great idea.
yeah, we'll come up with something next meeting for you. A little more once we have some time to look at it.
I mean, it's really endless what you're talking about, and even non-living things. I mean, scoreboards, all kinds of
Right.
things, like big things. If somebody, you know,
Right, and it's a lot easier to name something like that than a whole park because now we're dealing with the county and everything. This becomes a pretty complicated
Yeah.
mess. So
You have the Ryan Jones Memorial Park. What's that? Formerly Golden Spike Park. Oh,
Yeah.
right, right.
You know, when I was in Iraq, there was all these camps around, and Camp Virginia, Camp Pennsylvania, you know, and there were universally were states, and then as there were casualties, and someone who was highly respected became a fallen hero, there was a trend to rename the camp after that person. Well, that was quickly put a kibosh on it because the helicopter pilots who were trying to were using maps that were not immediately updated, and they were getting lost because they say go to Camp Bury. Well, what's that? That used to be Camp Virginia. Oh, okay, you know as it was said, you got to be really careful
Yeah.
about because all the maps and all the Google Earth stuff and
Yeah, these were all things we've been talking about. So give us a little bit more time on that one too. That's
anything
brand
else,
new. So.
council? Any other items? City staff?
I got just a couple quick things. I'll go quick. Just a reminder, our senior lunch is Friday. If any of you want to come and help. I did ask Rich and Miranda to put some effort in. I'm still a little bit concerned. I mean, our COVID numbers aren't dropping, and I get really nervous when we have a group of seniors meeting together for some purpose that we're doing. I get really nervous about that. And that's where the city attorney side comes out and says we need to cancel these things. But I'm in a different position where it's a little bit harder to do that at this point. So I did ask Rich and Miranda to put forth some effort. So I would maybe even ask you guys if you're going to show up to wear masks. I think it's just respectful for us to do it. Again, I'm not going to say we need to make it mandatory, but if you are going to come up, it'd probably be a good gesture on our part to at least do what we can on that. I believe they want us there at 11:30. A lot of you have done that already, but just a reminder that that's there. And also, if you haven't had the chance, our veterans program was released this week. You need to watch that. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell narrated that, and Chris did a phenomenal job with it. It really turned out nice. And there's also a tribute to Mayor Searle on there that I think was really touching and fitting. So kudos again to all of our people. Rich helped spearhead that too and put that kind of together, and Chris did a phenomenal job. So if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's very well done. So that's all I had.
All right.
I did have one save round while we were in the meeting. I did get an email back on Raising Cane's. 8:30 a.m. is still the ribbon cutting time, just so you put that in your calendar.
What date was that?
January 11th, which is a Tuesday.
Did they come back with a response on the number that they will accommodate?
I told them about 25, and they said that should be perfect.
They just didn't want the public there.
They just didn't want to be a really massive thing, and then
And then they were more concerned about how many. I think there was some confusion about how many people were doing the ribbon.
That's more
They
what
weren't
it
so
was
concerned
than
about
anything.
the people. They were like, well, only
It's
three
who's
or
actually
four.
cutting the ribbon. Once I said
25 people.
once I said it'd be the mayor and then their staff, that they understood. So.
Just one comment about all the seniors getting together. So that the Jones family had a Halloween party, and that's Ryan died of COVID, and their entire family got it. There was like out of like the extended family and everything, there was like 2 that didn't get it. So
Yeah,
They were vaccinated.
Pneumonia.
they were all vaccinated. Yeah.
this has bothered me from the very start. That's the first thing we did, because I was in this position then. The first thing we did was shut down that senior center, and it was right after that we had a positive case in our own senior center. And so, man, it was a nightmare there for a few days, and it's always worried me because I don't want that on our shoulders. And where there's such a high at-risk group, this is just the last thing that we really want. So any precautions we can take. And speaking of that too, not that he's sick or got COVID, but the mayor is doing better. Braden's spoken with him. I've spoken with him. Mike's spoken with him. In fact, we're scheduled. I don't know if this is his thoughts. I don't think it's his wife's thoughts, but we're supposed to meet tomorrow here at the facility. I'm almost surprised. That's a little bit different story than I got from his wife, but we welcome it and we're glad. But he is doing better. He's doing a lot better than the last time I spoke with him by the phone. So just so you all know, whether or not he gets back, I don't know about that before his term's over. But he's doing better and progressing, and I think he feels a lot better. So that's all good signs.
Okay. If nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
The Patterson used to own the Golden
Mike,
Flag Park.
Eggett,
They wanted
do you have a
some
minute?
kind of memorial or something there. Oh. They couldn't even have it. Even
Patterson's.
Max Patterson's family.
did?